everybody, Miss Jenny here. Happy Friday. Yay! Today I'm going to read a story that I heard many years ago on the Reading Rainbow, and it's called The Talking Eggs by Robert D. Souci. Pictures are by Jerry Pinkney. It's a folk tale from the American South. Back in the old days, there was a widow with two daughters named Rose and Blanche. They lived on a farm so poor it looked like the tail end of bad luck. They raised few chickens, some beans, and a little cotton to get by. Rose, the older sister, was cross and mean and didn't know beans from a bird's egg. Blanche was sweet and kind and sharp as 40 crickets. But their mother liked Rose the best because they were alike as two peas in a pod, bad-tempered, sharp-tongued, and always putting on airs. The mother made Blanche do all the work around the place. She had to iron the clothes each morning using an old iron filled with coals. She'd been doing these chores all afternoon. Her mama and sister would sit side by side in their rocking chairs on the shady porch, fanning themselves and talking foolishness about getting rich and moving to the city, where they could go to fancy balls wearing train dresses and lots of jewels. One hot day, the mother sent Blanche to the well to fetch a bucket of water. When the girl got there, she found an old woman wrapped in a raggedy black shawl, near fainting with the heat. "Please, child, give me a sip of water," the old woman said. "I'm about to die of thirst." "Yes, Auntie," said Blanche, raising out her bucket and dipping some water. "Drink what you need." "Thank you, child," said the old woman when she'd taken a swallow after swallow of water. You got a spirit of the dew right in your soul." Then she walked away down the path that led deep into the woods. When Blanche got back to the cabin, her mother and sister hollered at her for taking so long. "This water's so warm, it's near boiling," shouted Rose, and she dumped the bucket on the porch. "Here, your poor sister's near dying for a drop of cool water," her mother screamed. "And you can't even bring that little thing to her?" Then the two of them scolded and hit Blanche until the frightened little girl ran away into the woods. She began to cry since she didn't have anywhere else to go, and she was scared to go home. Suddenly, around the bend in the path came the little old woman in raggedy black shawl. When she saw Blanche, she asked kindly, "What made you cry so, you poor child?" "Mama and sister Rose lit into me for something that wasn't my fault," said Blanche, rubbing her tears off her cheek. "Now I'm afraid to go home." "Hush, child. Stop your crying. You come on home with me and I'll give you supper and a clean bed. But you got to promise you won't laugh at anything you see." Blanche gave her word of honor that she wouldn't laugh. Then the old woman took her by the hand and led her deep into the backwoods. As they walked along the narrow path, the bramble bushes and the tree branches opened wide in front of them and closed up right behind them. Soon they came to the old woman's tumble-down shack. A cow with two heads and horns like a corkscrews peered over the fence, and Blanche and brayed like a mule. "Hee-haw!" She reckoned it was a pretty strange sight, but she didn't say anything, not wanting to hurt the old woman's feelings. Next, she saw that the yard in front of the cabin was filled with chickens of every color. Some were hopping about on one leg, some running about on 3 legs or 4, or even more. These chickens didn't cluck, but whistled like mockingbirds. But strange as all this was, Blanche stuck by her promise not to laugh. When they got inside the cabin, the old woman said, "Light the fire, child, and cook us up some supper." So Blanche fetched the kindling from the woodpile outside the back door. The old woman sat near the fireplace and took off her head. She set it on her knees like a pumpkin. First she combed out all her gray hair, and then she braided it into 2 long braids. Blanche got pretty scared at this, but the old woman had been nothing but kind to her, so she just went on lighting the fire. After a bit, the old woman put her head back on her shoulders and looked at herself in the sliver of a mirror nailed to the cabin wall. She said. "That's better." Then she gave Blanche an old beef bone and said, "Put this in the pot for supper." Now Blanche was near starving, and the bone looked like a pretty sad meal for the two of them, but she did what the old woman had asked. Shall I boil it up for soup, Auntie? She said. Look at the pot, child, the old woman said, laughing. The pot was filled with thick stew bubbling away. Next, the woman gave Blanche only 1 grain of rice and told her to grind it in the stone mortar. Feeling mighty foolish, Blanche began to pound that 1 little grain of rice with a hefty stone pestle, and in a moment the mortar was overflowing with rice. When they had finished supper, the old woman said, "It's a fine moonshiny night. Child, come with me." They sat themselves down on the porch. After a time, a dozen rabbits came out of the underbrush and formed a circle in the yard. The men rabbits had frock-tailed coats, and the lady rabbits had little tail-trimmed dresses, and they danced standing on their hind feet, hopping about. One big rabbit played a banjo, and the old woman hummed along with it. Blanche kept time by clapping her hands, and the rabbits did a square dance. The girl felt so happy she never wanted to leave. She sat and clapped until she fell asleep. The old woman carried her inside and put her to bed. When Blanche got up the next morning, the old woman told her, "Go milk my cow." The girl did what she was told, and Two-Headed Cow with the curly horns gave a bucketful of the sweetest milk she'd ever tasted. They had it with their morning coffee. "You gotta go home now, child," the old woman said to Blanche, who was washing the breakfast dishes. "But I tell you, things will get better from here on out, and since you are such a good girl, I got a present for you. You go out to that chicken house. Any eggs that say, 'Take me,' you go ahead and take them. But if you hear any eggs that say, 'Don't take me,' you leave them. You leave them be. When you get near home, throw those eggs one after another over your shoulder, and so they break in the road behind you. Then you'll get a good surprise." When Blanche got to the little chicken house, she found all the nests filled with eggs. Half were gold or silver or covered with jewels. Half looked no different from the eggs she got from her own chickens back home. All the plain eggs told her, "Take me, take me." All the fancy ones cried, "Don't take me, don't take me." She wished she could take just one gold or silver jeweled one, but she did what the old woman told her and only scooped up the plain ones. She and the old woman waved goodbye to each other, then Blanche went home on her way. Part way home, she began to toss the eggs one at a time over her left shoulder. All sorts of wonderful things spilled out of those eggs. Now diamonds and rubies and gold and silver coins. Now pretty silk dresses and dainty satin shoes. There was even a handsome carriage that grew in a wink from the size of a matchbox, and fine brown and white pony that sprouted from the size of crickets to draw it. Blanche loaded all of these lovely things into the carriage and rode the rest of the way home like a grand lady. When she got back to the cabin, her mother and sister just gawked at her new finery. "Where did you get these things?" her mother asked, making Rose help Blanche carry the treasures inside. That evening, Mother cooked dinner for the first time, and Blanche was old enough to hold this, since Blanche was old enough to hold the skillet. All the time she telling Blanche what a sweet daughter she was. Her mama got the girl to tell her all about the old woman in the cabin and the talking eggs. When Blanche was asleep, the mother grabbed Rose and told her, "You got to go into the woods tomorrow morning and find that old auntie. Then you'll get some of those talking eggs for yourself so you can have fine dresses and jewels like your sister. When you get back, I'll chase Blanche off and we'll keep everything to ourselves. And then we'll go to the city and be dressed like fine ladies the way we were meant to be. Can't we just run her off tonight so I don't have to go poking through the woods looking for some old crazy auntie?" Rose whined. "There's not near enough for 2 of us," her mother said, getting angry. "You do as I say and don't be contrary." So the next morning, Rose set out for a drag foot into the woods. She dawdled mostly, but soon she met the old woman in the raggy black shawl. "My sweet little sister Blanche told me you got a really pretty house and all. I'd really appreciate to see it." "You can come with me if you've got mind to," said the old woman, "but you've got to promise not to laugh at what you see." "I swear," said Rose, "I won't laugh." So the old woman led her back through the brambles and the bushes in the deep woods. When they got to the old cabin, Rose saw the 2-headed cow that brayed like a mule and the funny-looking chickens that sang like mockingbirds, and she yelled, "If there was ever a sight, that's one. This is the silliest thing in the world." Then she laughed and laughed and laughed till she nearly fell down. Said the old woman, shaking her head. Inside, Rose complained she was when she was asked to start the fire, and she wound up with more smoke than flame. And when the old woman gave her an old bone to put in the pot, Rose said crossly, "That's going to make a mighty poor meal." She dropped it in the pot, but the old bone remained a bone, and so they only had a thin soup for supper. When the old woman gave her one grain of rice, Rose said, "That sad speck won't even hardly feed a fly." She wouldn't lift the pedestal, so they had no rice at all. The old woman muttered. Rose went to bed hungry. All night long she heard mice scratching under the floor and screech owls crawling at the windows. And in the morning the old woman told her to milk the cow, and Rose did, but she made fun of the two-headed creature, so all she got was sour milk, not even fit for drinking. When the old woman lifted her head off her shoulders to brush her hair, quick as a wink, Rose grabbed that head and said, "Now, I'm going to put your head back till you give me the presents like you get my sister." "Aha, you're a wicked child," said the old woman's head. "But I got to have my body back, so I'll tell you what to do. Go into the chicken house and take the eggs that say, 'Take me.' But you leave the ones that cry out, 'Don't take me.' Then you toss those eggs right over your shoulder and when you get on your way home." To be sure the old woman wasn't playing a trick, Rose set the old woman's head on the porch while her body sat groping around looking for it. And then she ran to the chicken house, and inside the plain eggs cried, "Take me, take me," while the gold, silver, and jeweled ones said, "Don't take me, don't take me. You think I'm fool enough to listen to you and pass up the prettiest ones? Not on your life." So she grabbed all of the gold and silver jeweled eggs, and she kept yelling, "Don't take me, don't take me," and off she ran into the woods with them. As soon as she was out of sight of the old woman's cabin, she tossed the eggs over her right shoulder, and as fast as she could. But out of the shells came clouds of whip snakes and toads and frogs and yellow jackets and a big old gray wolf, and these began to chase after her like pigs after a pumpkin. Holler and bloody murder. Rose ran all the way to her mother's cabin. When the woman saw the swarm of things chasing her daughter, she tried to rescue her with a broom, but the wasps and the wolves and the other creatures wouldn't be chased off. So mother and daughter hightailed it into the woods, screaming all the way with the animals following. When they returned home, angry and sore and stung and covered with mud, they found Blanche had gone to the city to live like a grand lady, though she remained as kind and generous as always. For the rest of their lives, Rose and her mother tried to find that strange old woman's cabin and the talking eggs, but they never could find that place again. I like the story a lot because it reminds me of Cinderella, and this little girl was able to make it because she had a kind heart and great character. Have a good weekend, and I love you. Besos.